Welcome to iRise Conversations with Joan. Welcome to iRise Conversations with Joan, where we explore the stories and strategies of people who have overcome adversity and achieved success in their lives. My name is Joan Nwosu, and I'm the award-winning author of the book iRise, The 10 Secrets to Getting Up When Life Knocks You Down. Our guest today is Purdeep Sangha. He's an entrepreneur, a strategic advisor, and award-winning author who is widely known as the Strategist for Businessmen. He's the founder of the movement of men becoming mindful alpha males and teaches men how to become the best and complete man. Purdeep is the world's leader in complete strategic advising and has an impressive background in helping men grow their businesses massively, increase their personal fulfillment, and improve their relationships with their wife and kids. He's the author of The Complete Man and the TV show host of Mind Your Business. Welcome, Purdeep, to the show.
Hey, Joan, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. So tell us a little, because I really always like to go back to hear a little bit about the history of our guests. So tell us, how did you get started? What's your background story? And how did you become the strategist for businessmen?
Wow, yeah, so that's kind of a loaded question. So I'll try to sum it up as much as I can without going off on tangents. But I grew up in a small town called Kelowna, British Columbia. I'm actually heading there. So the day after this recording, I'm heading there and I'm going to be spending a few days there. I grew up there. That's where my parents settled when they immigrated from India back in the 70s. And my parents didn't have a formal education. They just knew how to work hard. So they started working on an orchard. And that's how I grew up. I remember my brother and they would put us in an apple bin while they would be working on an orchard picking apples or cherries or whatever it was. And that's how I grew up. And it was a great upbringing. And then my parents eventually worked their butts off, saved enough money to buy their own orchard and start their own business. And then we kind of been in that family business for a long time now. So that was, you can say, the type of upbringing I grew up in, which is different than a lot of people these days.
Mhm.
I was a kid that used to spend almost all day out in the orchard, and sometimes I wouldn't even see another human being. Like I would just be out there doing my work, and me, the trees, the birds, the grass. But I'm so thankful for that upbringing
Mhm.
because it taught me so much about life and about mindfulness, which is a big element of being a mindful alpha male. And then my parents basically said, go off to um, university, get a degree. We want you to get a professional career. We don't want you working in the orchard, right? Because that's why they came here from
Yeah.
India to create a better life. So I
Mhm.
went to originally started in sciences, then went into business. I've been to multiple business schools, was in the corporate world for 14 years. I was an executive. You could say I had a great executive career. My goal is to be a CEO of a major corporation, but my heart wasn't really in it anymore at that point in time. And I basically one day walked into work. Actually, I told my wife first. I said, I'm going to quit. And she looked at me and she said, Are you nuts? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? And I had a great salary, executive career, and perks and all that kind of stuff. Boxes and tickets to the Raptors. And it was awesome from that perspective. But again, I was just tired of it. And then left and then started my own business in the advisory side and haven't looked back since. And we focus primarily, I do business in different sectors, but primarily helping other people be successful in their business. We also work with corporations. We work with executive teams because we have a number of different things that we do. But main reason how I got into working with men in one avenue of our business is because when I grew up, I would say I had the fortune and sometimes the challenges of our household. And we grew up in traditional gender roles. So traditional Indian culture has traditional uh, gender roles, which I would think there's nothing bad with that. I actually see there's a lot of good things with that. And I'm not saying that women, are meant to stay in the kitchen and guys are meant to do that. But having specific roles so that the relationship works, right? So people know what they are responsible for and what they're good at.
Mm.
And the challenge, though, was that because my dad in particular worked, my mom worked hard too, just as hard. And my dad used to say that all the time. He used to say that, my mom used to work hard, even harder than he would. And he wouldn't know what to do without her. But he struggled from the perspective of he spent his entire life, because even when he moved here, he was sending money back to India and trying to help people and feed his family back home, his parents and siblings and stuff like that. There was a lot of responsibility on him. And coming to this country and not having formal education and working hard and just sheer work ethic, he spent all his time in the basically working, saving up with the for the family, and he couldn't find an outlet to really create fulfillment for himself outside of that. And he struggled with alcoholism. And so when he was sober dad, he was awesome. Like he was just like the best dad. We could always go to him for anything. We knew that he was just a solid person, and he was an alpha male. Like he was a big guy. He was 6'1", 240 pounds. Like when he came into the room, you could sense his presence. And he was also very emotional. He like some of our friends, they joke around. They're like, our dad being a big guy, he was also very open in his emotions. So he taught me that it was okay to be sensitive from that perspective. But with his alcoholism, he struggled. And he became when he would drink, he would be a different man. Like when he crossed that line of drinking too much, it was like a completely different person. And when I was young, that was scary because he would wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm not sure what he went through because he never really talked about it as a young boy, but he would wake up in night terrors. And if he had been drinking, it was like a bomb went off in the house, right? And I'd be scared as heck. And I was at a very young age, probably at the around age of 8. As far as I can remember, I was the only person in the house that could calm him down. And so my mom and him, when he would drink, would kind of go like this because my mom was like, "Why are you drinking so much? And what's wrong with you?" Whereas I took a different approach and was able to calm him down. And I would actually, it was when he would drink a lot, I would be the one putting him to bed. And I would actually sit with him. Like he had this, I don't know what it was, but he had this level of comfort when I was around when he'd be drinking. And it just allowed him to, whatever it was, be at comfort. But I always, from a young age, it was scary, but it was also very eye-opening for me because I realized that, people go through challenges, and I started to study his behavior because I was always wondering when is he going to drink next?
Mm.
And so that's what got me into psychology. And then at the age of 17, I became a personal trainer because it's always been in me to help other people. Like that's been always been my passion. I was an academic tutor throughout university. And when I was 17, I would work with individuals as a personal trainer to help them get fit, lose weight or gain muscle or whatever it was. And I was just so passionate about it. I would give them a plan and be like, okay, I'm here to help and a nutrition plan. And I was very keen at that age because I was very much into studying and learning and growing. And most of the people wouldn't execute. And I
Yeah.
would wonder, like, what the heck is going on? Like 80% of the individuals say they wanted something, but they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then when I started to look into it even further, I was like, okay, there's something else behind this. And it was really the belief systems. It was the stories that they were telling themselves. It was their identity. It was the support network that they had at home, or maybe they hadn't structured their goals effectively. So that's when I really started to study psychology even deeper.
Mm.
And then I started to study neuroscience. And that has been my passion ever since. I've been studying neuroscience for over 20 years, 25 years to understand the human brain, even before neuroscience became popular. It wasn't even really called neuroscience back then. It was kind of like brain science.
Mm.
And neuroscience has become a lot more popular now, and that terminology. But I started to use these techniques to leverage and grow. And taught myself how to have a photographic memory. I could play sports even without having a background in it and play better than other people because I use those skills of using your brain and your body effectively. And it wasn't until second year university that I was studying with a colleague, a peer, and we were studying for a biology exam. And we had the textbooks open. He had a textbook, I had a textbook. I would open up a random page, ask him a question, and he was supposed to answer, and the same vice versa. And after a few rounds, he looked at me and he said, he opened up his book. He said, Purdeep, you have this entire book memorized page by page, word for word. And I remember these words still to this day. He said, that's not normal, right? And not that I was gifted or anything like that. It wasn't that I had this special talent given to me by God. I just utilized through my studies my
Mhm.
brain and my body more effectively. And I've been teaching people how to do that ever since. And we've started a whole division on performance in the professional world, combined with seeing my dad struggle, because we also know that, and people always ask, why not help women? It's because we have a very deep expertise in helping men. And I'm a man, and I can't say that I know what it's like to be in a woman's shoes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've never gone through a menstrual cycle or had kids or anything like that. So it would just be complete BS
Yeah.
for me to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I also had this, and I know this is a lot, but my grandfather, when my grandparents immigrated over from India, I grew up with my grandparents, my dad's parents, and I had the fortune of having my grandfather was in the Indian British Army for 30 plus years. So he had seen war and death. He was also a very spiritual man. The most spiritual man I knew. He's long gone now. He's passed away about 20 something years ago. But his father, so my great grandfather, was a spiritual teacher in India for 60 years. So my grandfather taught me things like mindfulness and meditation, and also principles and values, because he had that from the military, like the old school military, the way that it used to be. And so I learned all those concepts of being an alpha male, but also the mindfulness aspect, which has really brought us to where we are today, to bring a holistic aspect in helping professionals. We also work with women, but primarily men, succeed in business or their corporate careers as well as their personal lives.
Mhm.
And from a psychological perspective, from a spiritual perspective, but also from a performance perspective, because we have the science behind that as well. Because we actually created an entire research division on the science behind performance. So we do a lot, but it was really around helping professionals from a holistic perspective, because there's no such thing as business and your personal life being separate. They're all tied together.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing, amazing story. Just so much to unpack in there. And, everything you said it's phenomenal. It's mind blowing. Like we're going to talk about neuroscience, because that's something that I'm also interested in. But let's just take you back a little bit. So you have this, let's call it a system, and you work with men in different areas of life. And you mentioned the term alpha male, you've mentioned mindfulness. A lot of people may not know what these terms, again, alpha male and female, keeps getting a bad rap and a lot of negative connotation when it comes to that word or that description of a person. So what is an alpha male, and how is an alpha male different from a mindful alpha male?
Sure. So an alpha male, if we take a look at it, if the traditional sense, most people think of a wolf pack, right? The leader of a wolf pack. That's typically the annotation that people have. And but they don't understand the full grasp of it. The alpha male, and there's an alpha female, right? In the wolf pack too. The alpha male is there to protect the pack. The alpha male is there to make sure that the pack survives. The health of the pack is the most important thing. And we as human beings, believe it or not, we have a hierarchical system. That's how evolution wise, that's how we developed, right? And this is how our brain works. And it's as much as we want to go against evolution, if it's hardwired into us, it's tough. But alpha, if you take a look at what that is, it's a Greek letter. And the Greek letter is basically, it's the first Greek letter, alpha, which means beginning. It's the origin. So in that context, it's being the creator of your life. That's essentially what being an alpha male is, or an alpha female. It's being the creator of your life. It's taking control and actually creating your destiny and what you're meant to do or what you want to do. Whereas if some people refer to beta male, I don't even like that word. Um, uh, but if you're not creating your life, you're basically left with a life that is based on circumstances or what other people give you.
Yep.
That's essentially it from an alpha male perspective. There a sense of dominance? And there's people, when we talk about human nature, women are more likely to be attracted to alpha males, right? We know that,
True.
right? Because alpha males come along with a more, if we take a look at today's age, it's higher status, better finances, better ability to take care of the family, better ability to take care of the woman. Like that's just natural part of it. But the mindfulness aspect is very important. And mindfulness, and the best way I can describe it is there's two parts to it. A is being present in the moment, being present about what you are doing at this particular time, but also being mindful of the ripple effect that your actions and your thoughts have on other people. And there's an old Buddhist saying that says, anytime you are about to act, or even a thought, think of what the ripple effect will be throughout the universe. What will happen for generations to come based on this action that you're about to take? But also laugh at yourself as if it's actually going to make a difference. So the whole point is to, yes, be aware of what the impact could be, but don't take it so seriously that you don't take action, right? That you're frozen,
Mm-hmm.
or that you're constantly anxious or worried or stressed out. So this is the whole concept. There's a lot of alpha male guys out there, but they're not mindful. They're not really taking into consideration what their actions are doing to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
to other people, to their family members, to their spouses, and generations to come. Because the way we parent our children or the way we raise our kids sets up how they raise their kids,
That is true.
believe it or not. And so it does have a ripple effect through generations. So when you combine the two, it becomes very, very powerful because not only do you have that ability to create your life, but you're also doing it for other people. You're also being aware, you're taking care of other people, and the actions that you're taking are positive on all fronts. It's not perfect. You're
Yeah.
never going to be perfect. You're going to have good intent sometimes, and sometimes you might do something that has ramifications that aren't what you thought of, but it's just part of life as well. So that's the mindful alpha concept. And in today's age, we've kind of beaten down alpha males to the point where men are afraid to be alpha males.
Yep. They're afraid to admit. Yeah, like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, they don't even know if you ask men what it means to be a man these days, it is so messed up
Yeah.
because you're gonna have guys that you might have the guys that are like, yeah, they talk about it and they stand up to it. Then you're gonna have guys that don't even know, and then you have guys that know, but they don't want to say it. They don't have because they feel like someone's gonna come down and say, "How dare you say that?"
Yeah. That,
So it's a very fine line right now.
it is. It is. And so I like how you described it about, being in control of your world and creating that which you want. And I do know that certain people are born with this natural traits of being an alpha, and then some are like the beta, the omega, the other ones. Is it possible for non-alphas to become alphas if they follow some of your processes and they do the inner work? Can they become alpha males, mindful alpha males?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's not that, yeah, some people just have a natural tendency because there's an element of biology to it as well, right? Some men typically may have more testosterone or vasopressin or something, which are attached to, you can say dominance or and maybe even a borderline aggression. But yes, men can, and they have to be, because someone actually asked me this question in a workshop. They said, "Well, Pradeep, if what if all the males became alpha males? What's going to happen?
World will
Who's
be a better place. I'm sorry.
who's gonna?" I said, "What do you think the chances of that are going to be?"
Uh-huh.
Very slim.
Yeah.
But you have to be for anybody who wants the life, who has these big goals or wants a better relationship. Guess what? You need to be an alpha male. That's what women are truly attracted to. So if you want to keep your woman, if you want to make your woman happy, right? You got to step up. You got to show her that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about personal fulfillment because you were talking about your dad, how he was very, very hardworking, but when he came to personal fulfillment, maybe that wasn't happening in his life, and that led him to alcohol. And I'm sure a lot of men, look, I don't claim to be a man, and I know there's a lot of pressure on men to provide, to protect, and to do all of these things. And so a lot of men may be struggling with personal fulfillment, or there's just no space or no time in their lives for personal fulfillment. And then they go through life, end of life, they're like, oh, regrets, I don't feel fulfilled, or whatever it is. How do you help men achieve, first of all, find what personal fulfillment means to them, and how can they make time in their very busy life to start to achieve some of those goals?
Yeah, and let's just say the sooner that we start having these conversations, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Because what ends up happening is if you build a habit, and that's essentially what has happened for most men, if they've built a habit of 30 years of just focusing on their business or their career, which is very, very common,
Yeah.
It is tougher. It's not impossible. It's tougher to break that habit, right? Because that's where they get their single source of fulfillment from. And that's where we have to show them that there's other sources of fulfillment in life, like having a great relationship. The problem is, one of them is that take a look at marriages. Over 50% of them fall apart. So they're, and women too, right? This isn't just men.
Okay.
Half the men out there, and I'm going to say it's higher because we know through our stats and through our research, because we worked with thousands of men, that 80% of men are not satisfied in their relationship with their spouse. So if 8 out of 10 guys are, if they're not happy with their marriage, well, then what are they going to lean towards? They're going to lean towards their business.
Yeah.
And so we have to show them how to correct that in the marriage. And that's not necessarily always on the guys, right? Because women have shifted a lot too, shifted away from marriages and focusing more on careers, which is not, there's nothing wrong with that. But now women are getting a completely different message and saying you don't need men, for example, and executive careers or whatever that is. And again, that's great, but they're starting to lose fulfillment.
Yes.
So showing men that there's different levels of fulfillment. And here's what guys relate to: performance. That's why we talk about performance,
Mm.
and more about performance than fulfillment, because guys want to perform in every area. You talk about performing, yeah, they want to perform as a father, they want to perform as a husband, they want to perform in bed, they want to perform in wealth. It's all about performance. And if I can show them how to perform better, they will get more fulfillment from that. And that's ultimately, you can say, the way to get them there. And once they start seeing that, hey, look, if I perform better as a husband and my wife responds to me differently and it feels good, well, I like that. And now that that's working out well or better, I actually have more energy to work harder in my business.
Hmm.
Right? So it's basically it's a cycle. There's key elements, and to sum it up, right? It's very simple: business, wealth, family, and personal. And within the family, there's a subcategory which is relationships, right? And marriage. But most guys lean towards wealth and business or the career. They not forget, but it's a natural tendency through society to lean that way. If you can help, if what we do is that we help balance them out, when they get balanced out, they actually have more fulfillment. Here's just a simple practical example. Ask guys how many of them have goals for their um, wealth goals. Most guys will, the career guys most, but ask them how about a relationship goal or a parenting goal. What's your goal as a father? No. And if we can actually establish that, that automatically starts to shift them, because our mind, our brain, if we talk about the neuroscience behind it, is a goal-driven organ.
Hmm.
If you give it a goal, it latches onto that goal as long as you keep showing it that goal. But if you don't have a goal, it has no reason to be motivated to do something towards it. So if you give a man a goal towards his relationship and marriage, and he starts to do something and he sees progress, well, he's going to do more of it
Hmm.
because his brain's going to like it and say, hey, I like this. You're actually making progress. You're performing better. Let's keep doing more of it. So there's a system behind it, and it's really about getting balance. It's about setting proper goals outside of just wealth and showing guys that they can actually be happy in other areas, and that gives them more energy to be successful.
Again, I think that's why you alluded, because for women, I think fulfillment is more important to me than performance. So that's why like it just makes sense for men. If they're performance driven, then give them a goal and they can perform, and that would inspire them or encourage them to do better in their business. So I really want to encourage a lot of men, because I know we're just talking and some people might be like, oh, I don't have time to have other goals. I need to pay the bills. I have a lot of me. But like Purdeep said, sooner rather than later, you don't want to wait till 30 years to now start thinking about, oh my God, my relationship sucks, or my kids don't like me, they don't know me, I don't know them. I'm feeling very unfulfilled. Now is the time to start setting goals in other areas of your life. So personal relationships, start to consider those goals today. So tell us a little bit more about neuroscience. Like, it's very interesting, and probably a lot of people probably haven't heard about it, or they're not really, really into it and may want to get started, but not sure where to start. what will be an easy way for people to start to tap into some of this brain science called neuroscience?
um, yeah, where would a person start to really leverage that? I think a lot of books these days are actually incorporating neuroscience into it. If you take a look, there's a gentleman. He actually, I think, started probably at around the same time I did. His name is Jim Quick, and one of his books is Limitless. And he focuses specifically on how to improve the brain. That's where someone can start because then you'll start learning. He teaches people how to learn better, right? And that's essentially how I started too, because I taught myself how to learn faster, and that allowed me to gain skills, faster skills than most people. So I was able to develop my skill set over a period of 25 years faster than I normally would. So for most people, I would say that's a person to take a look at and say, this is kind of cool. And you can teach yourself a little bit of how to utilize and leverage your brain a little bit better. So that would be a great starting point.
Well, okay. I encourage everybody to get started because again, like rather than, and I know Jim Quick, I remember I was trying to learn how to read faster and I took one of his courses and I read a lot faster now, but not as fast as I should. I should go back and try some of this stuff because
Practice.
practice, if you can do it in 1 hour, why do you want to spend 10 days working on the same thing? We're all
Well,
about being more efficient and more effective.
yeah, and once you build that habit, if you're talking about speed reading, for
Yeah.
example, right, it's all eye movement.
Yeah.
That's all it is. If you can train your eyes to go back and forth faster, and you'll automatically start to retain things, but that's what it is. And that comes with practice, right? It just 5 or 10 minutes a day. And this is what I used to because I was so fanatical about this. And this is 20 years ago, is I used to just spend 10 minutes a day and just do speed reading. And once you condition yourself, then you'll start doing it. It just becomes it's like riding a bike.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. Okay. So we've talked about wealth and career and performance. Let's talk a little bit about relationships because I think a lot of people, like you said, 80%, 8 out of 10 men are unhappy in their relationships. That's very disheartening because there are a lot of people who are looking to get into relationships, are looking for some kind of fulfillment. Oh, once I'm in a relationship, my life will be perfect. And now to hear that 8 out of 10 people are unhappy is
Based
not,
on our based on
yeah,
our
based on
studies, yeah.
your studies, is not very encouraging. And I'm sure a lot of men who are listening are probably thinking, yep, sounds about right. That's me. What can they do? What practical tips or steps can they take today to start to revive or resuscitate their relationships?
Okay, so the first step is just this is a fundamental flaw of our society. And I think happens in other societies as well. No one teaches us how to be in a relationship. And same thing in school, no one teaches us how to manage our finances. There's three things that they don't do. Teach us how to be in better relationships, manage our finances, and perform and learn better. Funny thing in school is they never teach you how to learn.
What did they teach us? I don't remember.
It's really interesting when you think about it, right? For an
Yeah.
organization that's supposed to teach you where you're sitting there learning, they don't actually teach you how to learn. They don't, and again, back to the relationships and finances, because our school system is built around creating factory workers. That's what it was. That's what it's built on.
Mhm.
And we still continue that same operation. So here's what guys can do. First of all, realize that for the majority of guys, there's nothing wrong with you. You may need to change your approach in terms of how you are working in your relationship, how you are showing up in your relationship. And that's not a reflection of you being a bad person. It's just a reflection of you learning from your parents
Mm.
in terms of this is what a relationship was like or supposed to be like. And most parents had a dysfunctional relationship. If you're one of the lucky ones to have grown up in a healthy family where there's a healthy marriage, you might have picked up on some of those positive traits, but that's where we learn it from. And unfortunately, it's an unconscious thing. Our ability to be in a relationship, typically our style is developed by the time we're 12 years old. Kind of funny. You can be 40 years old. I'm 43. And the way I used to be in a relationship was based on being a 12-year-old. Like, that's kind of funny. It's because of our attachment styles and communication styles were developed as we were kids as a result of our parents, siblings, school systems, the movies we watched. So that's the first thing to identify. The second thing is to learn how to be a better husband. And you can pick up books.
Mm.
right? And reading is a great thing. I highly encourage couples to pick up books together. Here's a good book, Fall in Love, Stay in Love. It's an older book. I think it's 20 something years old, written by a psychologist that focused on relationship couples, that worked with thousands and thousands of couples. And it's a last name is Harley. It's Willard Harley, Harley. Phenomenal book series. He's got a number of series. One of them is Fall in Love, Stay in Love, Love Busters. Like he's got a series of great books that I recommend every couple read together.
Mm.
The other thing to realize, this is what guys take on a lot. And I'm not going to say this doesn't happen to women, but a lot of guys these days have been trained now to believe that it's them that's the problem. Women naturally come in and naturally know how to be good in a relationship. So therefore, if the relationship is not good, it's a guy's fault. That's completely wrong. There are a lot of dysfunctional behaviors coming from women.
Okay.
So to understand that your partner may need some help as well, and that if you create a safe space for her to learn and grow as well, you're gonna be that's one way to do it. And then if you ultimately need to, then there's obviously couples therapy, there's counseling, but it also depends on your social circle and network as well. If you hang around with couples that are unhappy, you are more likely to be unhappy.
Mm.
That's just the nature of how human beings work. So that's the other thing. If you want to be a better husband, hang around with guys who are better husbands. If you want to be a better father, hang around with guys who are better fathers. You will naturally pick up on that. The beauty of today's world too is decade ago it wasn't so prevalent. Now there's a lot of guys groups out there. There's a group that my one of my friends has. It's called Front Row Dads. It's in the US and it's all focused around being a better dad. Like that's the core focus. So you can join these men's group to learn about it. It just means that you have to be open to changing your ways a little bit. And if you take a look at it as a growth experience, as a learning experience, then you're more likely to be able to do that. So it's just like any other skill. And here's ultimately what it is, Joan. It's a skill. It's not a natural ability. It is a skill.
I think for me, that's the key message. And I strongly believe that it is not a natural ability. I wish it doesn't come naturally, and definitely no one taught me. I didn't learn it in school. My parents didn't know better either. So again, be willing to change and put in the work. There's a lot of resources out there, like you said, Purdeep. But again, I like what you said about not, and this is the society we live in. The men are always to blame. Oh, it's his fault. He's the one who did this. He didn't do that. He didn't do it. It's not always the man's fault. And I think people need to be open and honest about that. And whoever, but both parties get help, go through counseling, whatever it is, therapy, but get the help that you need before
Yeah.
it's too late. Because a lot of marriages are not making it these days.
No.
And we already said that if you have a good marriage, then you have the energy to focus on your business and make more money.
Yeah, you're gonna have way more energy for sure.
And make more money. That's awesome. So I really want to encourage everyone who's struggling in their marriages. If you're an alpha male who's extremely busy, you're successful in your financial world, in your career, your business, and your relationships are suffering, now is the time to look into that and make it better. So quickly, I want to touch on family business because I know you did grow up in a family business. And for me, my experience with family business is don't do it. Do not work with family, period. It doesn't matter. It's just a no. It's a deal breaker for me. But you've had that experience and you have some words of wisdom when it comes to that, kind of telling people how they can navigate a family business and build that for the future generations.
Yeah, okay. So family business is a really interesting one. Yeah, it can be done. It can be done successfully. The first suggestion I would have is to treat it as a formal business, not a family business. And what I mean by that is have agreements in place.
Okay.
If you get into a partnership with your spouse or a sibling or with your parents, whatever that is, a lot of times what we do is we say, we don't need that in writing, we're family. That's what causes the problems in the first place
Yes.
because it's not in writing. And so just because it's your spouse and you're getting along great today, or it's your brother or your sister, doesn't mean you're going to get along great tomorrow. So prepare for that. These agreements are not put in place to, um, uh, make sure that you don't do anything bad. They're there to make sure that if things do go sideways, you're more likely to come out keeping that relationship because it's in writing. Hey, look, we agreed to this. We may not be getting along great right now, but it's in writing. Why are we fighting about this? It's a legal agreement. So that's one of the most important things to pay attention to. The other piece is there's actually advisors out there. I'm actually one of them. So I'm a family enterprise advisor certified, and there's about 450 of us in Canada and in North America as well. And what we do is we work with family businesses. We're certified because there's a system and a strategy to do so. And so I always recommend this, not just in family business, but for any entrepreneur or professional, have an advisor that can help you navigate before you need basically legal help or whatever that is, and have those conversations to be strategic. So that's the second thing I would say is find someone who can help you. Okay, identify what you're missing in family business. Now, the other things with family business is to also understand that, yeah, things do go sideways,
Yeah.
and that is normal in family business. So that comes with times. It's not if, it's when. That's the only thing, right? It's when is it going to happen? And then you just have to be prepared for that. So those are things to take a look at. There's so many benefits of family business, though, that so many people overlook those challenges. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes back and bites them in the butt. But in terms of other tips, let me think about this for a little bit. When it comes to family business, what are other tips? Well, the other tips are to realize that family, it's what we call a three-circle model. And it's so basic, but it's so profound. And I didn't create this, it was actually created by someone else. Is if you can actually, if you're in a family business and you're listening to this, is take out a piece of paper, draw three circles. In one circle, write down family. In the other circle, write down ownership. And the other circle, write down business. And realize that those are three separate areas. Just because you are in the family doesn't mean you have ownership unless you legally have ownership, right? Just because you have ownership doesn't give you the right to manage the business because the business could have a whole different management structure.
Uh-huh.
So to understand the three different circles and where you fit in your role and where your family members fit in is very, very important. That is probably the foundational thing. If families can draw those three circles and say who's in what, then you'll actually be way more likely to be successful and succeed.
Agreed. Because most family businesses I've seen, like everyone's in every single circle, like
Yeah,
everyone's in everything. Yeah.
no, and that's where you get the
Yeah.
mess.
Yes, absolutely. Huge mess. Absolutely. Well, thank you so, so much. So tell us a little bit about your book, finally, The Complete Man. Why did you write it? And what is the complete man who has it all?
Well, the complete I'll answer that question in terms of why did I write it. I wrote it because for a couple of reasons. A, I love writing. B, it was a culmination of my personal experiences in my own life, as well as my dad, and as well as the men that I've worked with. And I truly believe that men needed to hear this and needed to read this book to help them in their own lives because I saw men struggling. And so one of the ways to help them was to write a book and say, here are the different elements that you can work on to have it all. Because that's essentially the concept is you can't have it all because there's another misconception that guys have. Well, I need to sacrifice one area of my life for success in the other. No, you don't. That's a complete myth. So you don't have to sacrifice your marriage or your family to be successful in business, right? That's a common thing. Entrepreneurs say, I got to give up time with my family to be successful in my business. No, that's not necessarily the case. It may be a short period of time or maybe a certain period of time, but don't make that period of time your entire life. And that's what can end up happening. So this book was written for that, and it's about all aspects. It's from marriage to relationships to sex to wealth to parenting. It's every aspect of a guy's life. And it's very practical. So at the end of every chapter, there's like, here's the action items that you can take. And here's the beauty of it. And I didn't even realize, but some of the chapters I thought would be more popular than others. And it turns out that some of the chapters that I get feedback on the most are the ones that I didn't even think about, like addiction. That's one of the ones I get feedback on the most from guys is thank you for writing this chapter. It's helping me because a lot of guys are there are addictions. There's addictions to substance, to alcohol, whatever it may be, and they feel less of themselves as a result. And they don't understand because they've never gone to get help why they have this addiction or whatever it is. And they feel like a horrible person when they are an absolutely great person. They just have an addiction. And that's, that was my dad. He was a good person that just dealt with alcoholism. He wasn't a bad human being. He just didn't know how to get past it. He didn't know how to read English very well, so he couldn't pick up a self-help book, which, very little did they have back then to say, how do you get over alcoholism? So now guys have the tools to be able to do that. And that's one of the tools. And I wrote it in 2020 for this very specific reason. As soon as the pandemic hit, something inside of me said, this is probably going to get pretty bad. And guys are going to be hit hard because I didn't know I was going to go on for several years. But what I did see at that time, I think I started writing it in June or May. I can't remember. We had it actually released by December. So it was crunch time. It was written out. But I knew that guys would struggle because because businesses were being shut down, people were losing their jobs. And the problem, or I'm going to say the challenge with men, is that we tie a big part of our identity to our careers and our money we make or our businesses. So men started to lose their jobs and their businesses, and their self-worth just dropped. Not that it doesn't happen to women, but it's women don't tie their identity to their jobs and their careers as much as men do. For men, it's almost everything. That's their title. You ask guys what they do, you go into a room or whatever, and they'll talk about the careers. That's the first thing. And it's happening to women now too, which is kind of scary. But for men, that's what ends up happening. So that's why I wrote the book. I said, this is the time to do it. And there's something inside of me that said that. So I wrote the book, released it, and I think it was perfect timing because guys and women too, but predominantly guys, depression rates skyrocketed, anxiety rates, suicide rates. It just kind of went off the chart. So that's essentially why I wrote the book.
Oh, awesome. So that's a good starting point for anyone who's ready to really move their life to the next level. Talking about the type of performance, because men, let's focus on the performance. Let's forget fulfillment. The performance will lead to your fulfillment. I'm never going to forget that one. That's a good place to get started. So how else can people work with you if they really wanted to move to the next level and really achieve success in all areas of their lives?
So are we talking about, are you asking about the programs that we have?
Programs that you have.
Yeah, so we have three verticals that we kind of focus on. One vertical is strictly business, is how do you grow your business, or we do more business than career coaching, but it's about how do you grow your business. The other one is performance. And this is where we actually work both on the business side, we work with men and women, both. Okay. On the performance side, we work with both men and women as well, but it just happens 85% of our clientele are men. And on the performance side, we show you how to have more energy, more drive, more motivation, more clarity, for example, more creativity. This is the science aspect of it to say, do you want to be a super high, what we call an ultra performing business professional? That's the program that we have. And we go in and guys relate to this because if you tell them to do something, they don't always like it, especially if it's kind of like, how do I say it? Psychologically based, or even if we talk about spirituality, kind of like, but as soon as you say there's science behind it, then they're like, okay, got it, right? Yeah. There's some facts behind it, there's some research behind it, they'll do it. So that's the other area of business. And then we do men's leadership, which kind of incorporates performance and business at the same time. So guys that say, hey, I want to grow my business, but I also want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I just want to have a better life overall, be more fulfilled. That's where we combine the two. So we kind of do three separate areas that are all related.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So much to learn, so much information today in just 45 minutes. And I think that everyone probably got something out of this conversation. And I really want to encourage anyone, as a starting point, you can pick up the book, The Complete Man, because like Purdeep said, you can't have it all. We've been deceived for so long that you have to give up something for another, but it's possible to have it all, to have the career, the success, the wealth, great relationship, be a great father as well, and still have time for your personal life, whatever your personal goals are in life. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Purdeep. That was an amazing conversation.
Hey, this was a great chat. Appreciate it, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you did get a lot from today's episode. I will share Purdeep's information in the show notes so that you can go ahead and become a complete man, an alpha, a mindful alpha male. That's what we want to see. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you all same time next week on iRise Conversations with Joan.